Hello, and welcome to the 12th house, Passions, Prisons, Perceptions, subtitled Reflections on the Morning Sunrise. I'm Shane M. Nygaard, and this is a video in my astrology series about the 12 houses of the Zodiac, considered through the time of day and quality of the light at that particular time of day. Check out my introduction video in the series named Introduction, From Sunrise Through Nightfall. That's an overview of how I'm reflecting on the houses in this series. As you'll see, or have already seen if you watched other videos, I always begin by grounding my reflections in psychologist Carl Jung's teaching, stick with the image. This is my favorite Jung quote because there's just so much to it. Sticking with the image is sticking with the imagination, the imagination. It's how we all look at and perceive things, height, width, depth, and dimension. I mean, do a 360-degree look around you. That's the image that you're in right now. He also said image is psyche. So we see when we're imagining, sticking with the image, we're active in psyche's world. And with psyche, as the Greek word for soul, we can understand when we're imagining, we're ensouled. And this is huge, especially for our astrology, which is filled with imagery. When we stick with the astrological imagery, our astrology is ensouled. And we know the 12 houses each have distinct imagery, as seen and imagined in many different ways and multiple perspectives, many images. From this multitude of perspectives for the 12th house, it's referred to as the unconscious. Ooh, it's self-undoing or self-sabotage, often connected with self-sacrifice. It's the house of the malice daimon, or AKA bad spirit. Again, ooh. It's the place of monasteries, zoos, or hospitals. I mean, think about it, those places that deal with energies so vast and wild, we need earthly containers for them. Medical astrology sees this house as the location of life-threatening illnesses, AKA hospitals. It's also the place of seclusion or prisons. It's considered one of the most challenging houses. For this short video, the images we'll stick with here for the 12th house are the images of the time of day and quality of light. In a 24-hour day, with each house representing a 2-hour block of time, the 12th house is about 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock a.m. at the ascendant, the start of the day, with the movement of the sun progressing clockwise. In this model, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock a.m. is the time of sunrise. Good morning. The time when the sun rises above the horizon line, symbolizing the Apollonian quality of bringing the concealed to light, and an emphasis on what is visible. The morning sunrise is often quite the evocative sight to behold. So let's look at this light in the light of my title, Beginning with Passions. Author Mary Ballow describes this wonderfully in her novel, A Summer to Remember. She says, and yet day and night meet fleetingly at twilight and dawn, and their merging sometimes affords the beholder the most enchanted moments of all the 24 hours. A sunrise or sunset can be ablaze with brilliance and arouse all the passion, all the yearning in the soul of the beholder. So we start to get this image, this sense of passion and of yearning in the 12th house. Sticking with the image, we see the sunrise itself can sometimes express this yearning and this steamy passion. And William Shakespeare also captured this quality in Romeo and Juliet, when Romeo sees his love, Juliet. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou her main art far more fair than she. It is my lady, oh, it is my love, oh, that she knew she were. And we can also recognize this in the 12th house's association with monasteries, the passionate relationship monks and nuns have with their God, a passion, a devotion so vast they need, they need a secluded space within which to hold it. On the same note, we can see how, and you had a spoiler, the 12th house can symbolize prisons, those confined spaces for those performing actions beyond societal laws. Also, the sunrise reveals the material world before us. And some spiritual traditions believe, how does it go? We're like spiritual beings living a human life or something like that. I don't think that's quite right. But the point being, our boundless spirit is trapped in a human body, i.e., a prison of sorts. There's just an incredible amount of symbolism with the 12th house and prisons, as we'll see. And as a note here, consider how Saturn has its joy in the 12th house. Saturn brings limits and restrictions and boundaries. So within the seemingly boundaryless quality of the 12th house, we need boundaries and containers to manage its vastness. No wonder Saturn is thrilled here, as it loves containing the containerless. And perceptions. I mean, imagine as day begins, we see the sun revealing itself, rising above the horizon line. The rising sun shows us what night has hidden, and the sun itself is very visible, often dangerously so. I mean, it's dangerously bright and right in our line of sight. Driving at this time of morning into the sun can be so dangerous. Scientists have researched the phenomenon. Studies show bright sunlight may create visual illusions that lead to driver error, including fallible distance judgment, and is associated with an increased risk of a life-threatening motor vehicle crash. I mean, visual illusions, fallible judgment, and life-threatening issues, they're all 12th house concerns. And also notice how we cannot look directly ahead of us here. This is appropriately symbolic of the unconscious, that which is outside of our conscious awareness, what we cannot look at directly. I mean, this is the territory of the 12th house. We can't look directly ahead. We have to look elsewhere. And when someone has planets in this house, it tunes them into what others can't look at directly. I think that's just fascinating. So sticking with the images, let's see some chart examples to better understand these connections in a life, or three. We'll look at three charts together, focusing on the 12th house. So the first we'll see is pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood founder Dante Gabriel Rossetti, with Sun, Mercury, Moon, and Chiron all in Taurus in his 12th house. The second is one of Mexico's greatest artists, Frida Kahlo. Though our attention may be immediately drawn to her incredible 11th house stellium, notice Mercury and Leo in her 12th. And thirdly, famous mime Marcel Marceau with the moon and Mars in Taurus. Each of these artists in their own way reflects the passions, prisons, and perceptions of the 12th house and the sunrise. Chart data will follow, so let's explore. Dante Gabriel Rossett, painter and poet of the pre-Raphaelite Romantics in Victorian England, one of my astrology and art crushes. As you see in his chart, Rossetti was born in London, England, and lived his life predominantly during England's Victorian era, very notable for his life and his work. The Victoria era in England was a time of prim and proper manners, covering up and concealing, corsets galore. Social norms required women to be covered up and kept uptight with corsets and huge dresses, not exactly an era endorsing free-flowing passions, but the corset with its cage-like restrictions became a symbolic prison for women's sexuality and sensual expression. And Rossetti seemed very tuned into this. The BBC did a series on the pre-Raphaelites called Desperate Romantics. I mean, note how desperation and romanticism have connections with longing and yearning and passion. The art and poetry of this brotherhood focused on atmosphere and mood over narrative, artistic introspection, hello, 12th house, female beauty, sexual yearning, and altered states of consciousness. I mean, a lot of this sounds so 12th house. And Rossetti in particular brought a deep meaning to his work as we look through the light of the 12th house. In a time when prim and proper manners were par for the course and symbolically imprisoning, Rossetti captured the yearning and longing that was locked up. You can hear his poem, The Kiss, read by actor Aiden Turner, who played Rossetti in the series, in the link below. Not including it here, but put a pause here on the video. Go check out Aiden Turner reading The Kiss. So passionate. And just look at these paintings from Rossetti. They contain a certain passion, a yearning quality, a yearning to escape the imprisoned feminine expression. Rossetti captured this yearning to be free from a corseted life, bound up tight. And the color palette has the overtones of the golden sunrise, am I right? I mean, the first one here, golden tresses, emphasizing the free-flowing, gorgeous hair. And a sea spell, emphasizing the loose, lilting dress, with the sea, a place evocative of movement, openness, and freedom. We could dive deeper into Rossetti's chart and art, but we move on to Frida Kahlo, one of Mexico's greatest artists, described as fiery, fierce, and passionate, with Mercury and Leo in her 12th house. Mercury as expression and thought and communication, and Leo as creativity. So creative expression, but in the house of prisons. How can her passion to express herself be realized? Following a major bus accident, which left her on bed rest for months, she started painting self-portraits. We see you, Leo, Mercury, hello, self-portraits, while confined, symbolically imprisoned, to her bed. Kahlo's life was filled with physical suffering, hello, 12th house, which influenced much of her painting. We can see how she made visible her suffering. While it can often be hidden away, we perceive it through her painting. And notice in the broken column her corseted frame as if binding her body together. So from this passionate artist, we move to famous mime Marcel Marceau, with Mars and the Moon in his 12th house. As a mime, Marceau created Bip, his famous powdery white-faced character in a floppy hat and a rose. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to see a voiceless mime's prison as the silence within which he works. And we can only use our visible perceptions to understand his art. Marceau explains of his character Bip. Bip is a character playing with characters that the audience must imagine. The mime expresses the visible in the invisible and the invisible in the visible. By creating invisible characters, Bip becomes a Don Quixote fighting windmills, torn between light and shadow, between the daily comedy and tragedy of life. So very 12th house there. Marceau created his entire art around what Bip could see, perceive, but the audience could not. I love that. As a mime, he was showing us the invisible world of the 12th house in a way that captured our hearts and imaginations rather than making us have to turn our heads away. The symbolism there is just extraordinary. So there we are, with a short look into the passions, prisons, and perceptions of the 12th house. Thank you for sticking with this video. What did you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below and check out my other videos in this series as they are posted. Cheers.